All right, welcome to this week where we're going to talk about Shintoism. So, the big question is, what is Shintoism? And that's a really hard question in some ways to answer. Um, it's technically the traditional, or sometimes called the indigenous religion of Japan. So it's there. I mean, some people in Japan think it's just always been there. It's just this religion uh, um, that has existed. Sometimes there's no sort of official beginning to Shintoism. It's just again part of the essence. In fact, Japanese creation myths, these early kamis, these gods we'll talk about, created Japan. So it came from that. Um, Shintoism, it's a religion, very much a belief system as well. Um, one reason why probably from the West it's a little difficult uh, to think about, because there's no real main texts in Shintoism. There's not like a Shinto Bible that lays out the main precepts or the main ideas. There's no main like Shinto preacher. There's just that I guess sort of the best way to think about Shintoism is that it's very much a nature-based religion. There's certain elements in the world have sort of powers, forces. You can sometimes they're personified in these things called kami, these gods, and you can worship them, and you can pray for them, and they'll sort of look over you. So it's very nature based. There are Shinto priests who do recite Shinto prayers. You can go to Shinto shrines and pray for and worship and pray for good luck and whatever, similar in the West, you pray to maybe Jesus or God or whatever religion it is. They exist there and they help you. It's a polytheistic religion and there's just many different forms. Here again, this is this Fushimi Nari, which we've talked about a lot in Kyoto, which with all the orange gates. But a lot of these shrines, I mean, the gates, the opening of Fushimi Inari is, it has all the elements of a shrine, but then there's this whole back area to it where you can then, these are all people's names and family members. So you can get these tori, the gates. You can write your names on them and you can put them around the whole area. So, I mean, the shrine, I mean, it's not like a church where you just go to the church and you go in and out. And there is like a sort of a structure, a sanctuary structure we'll talk about when you get to shrines as well. But, an element of that is the gardens that exist. Like a lot of the shrines are in natural elements, mountains or valleys or waterfalls, and then they're elemented and they're brought into this world. So, to understand what Shintoism is it's more of just the components of it. There's not you can't just look at like I can't say, hey, go pick up a book, the Shinto book, because there's not a specific one, right? So what that kind of breaks down is there's sort of three main features of Shintoism, and this is where we'll talk about this a lot this class, this lesson period this week. Is there's a good reading called the Soul of Japan. So you can read through there. They talk about kind of what what Shintoism is, and they really divide it into sort of these three features: kami, the deities; the matsuri, the festivals; and the jinja, the shrines. So they talk about those a little bit, and that's what this kind of lessons, they will kind of break those up as well. These kami being the deities, natural elements; they're worshipped for benefits or for, and also powers of destruction or danger or challenges or obstacles. There's just so much. You think of anything you could pray for, there's a kami associated with it, so you can make a prayer for it. So definitely the kami. The other things, matsuri, how do you worship these kamis? You have festivals, right? You go to the shrines, you do them. There's all sorts of different things. So there's a lot of annual festivals, imperial festivals, right? And this is where people engage worship with the kamis of Shintoism. Go to the shrines. This is where the community comes together. It's like on New Year's, everybody goes to their local neighborhood shrine and they take their, we'll talk about different things you can get, amulets and things that you can get from the shrine. You bring them back and they'll dispose of them, and then you get new ones for the next year, right? And so there's and that's just, there's usually like a neighborhood shrine. There's like more, There's more major shrines, Ise, which we sort of talked about before. This lesson, we'll talk a little more about Ise. We'll look at a video of Ise. But that's kind of the major. That's Amaterasu shrine. So that's and overall there's 80,000 shrines in Japan. So I mean they're everywhere from your local neighborhood onwards and upwards, and you people go to them for various festivals, certain times of year, or just for fun, right? Just because they're beautiful spots to relax in. Some of the main points of Shintoism, if there's nothing, if you didn't, there's a lot of kamis. I mean, I think there's 100 million at least, but just some that are important that you could kind of you should know about. And some of these there are stories embedded in those two texts we talked about, the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki. These are early we talked about last week with the histories that they have Shinto stories in the creation myths. So this is Izanagi and Izanami are the creation myths of Japan. Where did Japan come from? Well, it was created by these kami, these deities. They're brothers and sisters, and they churn the ocean and they lift it up, and they lift up the Japan out of the ocean. So again, before you knew plate tectonics, it had to come somewhere, so the islands were lifted out of the ocean by here's them churning the ocean with their spears. And then they procreate to populate the islands, and so that's where the people come from. Izanami, the sister, dies giving birth to the fire god. So and then she goes to the realm of death, Yomi. Izanagi goes to revive her, but as he's doing this, she sees that she's sort of decayed. Izanami says, "All right, get it. You got to leave. You got to get out of here." And Izanagi doesn't want to, but then ultimately finally leaves. But Izanami, because she was seen in this sort of decayed, brought shame upon her. She vows then to take 1,000 people a year from Izanagi. So this is kind of like the idea of where did death come from? Where did life come from? Life were made by these two brother and sister kami, but then something, one died, so then everyone needs to die, and so you can kind of see life and death, creation coming out of this. And then when Izanagi gets back to the land of the living, he starts creating all of these other kami. So all these kami start coming from him. Amaterasu, we'll talk about here in a second. Tsukuyomi, the sister, so from his eyes, there's the day and night, the sun and the moon. Another one, Susano, sort of the wind, ocean kami. And so all of them, onwards and upwards. So all the kamis are actually from Izanagi as he kind of bathes himself off, and these kamis come from him. So Izanagi and Izanami are important kami, the creator universes of Japan. And in this story, Amaterasu, who is seen here, we've talked about her in the context. She's the goddess of the Japanese imperial family. So this is her pictured here, and she has a very, as we just learned, she comes from the eye of her father, Izanami, and she has a brother, Susano, and they have this sort of sibling rivalry, right, where they're back and forth, and there's a couple different stories about it. They get in this big fight. Susano is attacking her. He kind of brings her to like the courtyard and calls her out for some things, and she just gets really upset. She gets frustrated with her brother. Susano is known to be kind of mean and mean spirited anyway. So she says, "Okay, that's enough, right? I don't want any more to do with you." So she retreats to this cave. The problem is Amaterasu is the sun. So when she goes in the cave, the sun goes away with her. So everything's in darkness, right? So now all the kamis live in this darkness, and they're upset with Sano, they're upset with themselves. So their whole goal is, how are we going to get Amaterasu out? We got to get her out of this cave, right? So that we can, and we can get the sun back. So they start having all these games and festivals, making all this noise and having all these parties, and hoping that she'd hear this. And ultimately they do, right? And as she's coming out of the cave, they hold up this mirror. So she sees herself, right, in the mirror. And so that's when she sees herself in the mirror, she kind of like allows herself to come out, and they close the cave behind her, right? And this is where the sun comes back. And so Amaterasu is out, and the sun is out, and that's how she becomes sort of this figure of important figure in the Shinto world, right? And Susano is exiled, not exhaled, exiled. and he exiled, and then he actually defeats this monster, so he kind of regains himself as well. But Sano is also like the storm kami, so he's always kind of this rambunctious figure. So that's kind of the two main sort of stories of Shinto stories, that that where did the world come from? How does Shintoism relate? And as we know that Amaterasu's great grandson, Nigiri, I think his name is, uh, he then he comes down from heaven, and then he is the founder of the Japanese imperial family. So that's how it all kind of relates there.